After studying this module, we shall be able to understand the meaning and characteristics of culture, identify the need to appreciate cultural differences among economies, identify the elements or dimensions of culture of a country.
Scholars have never been able to agree on a simple definition of culture. Hofstede, an expert on cross cultural differences and management, defines culture as the collective programming of the mind which distinguishes the members of one human group from another. Culture, in this sense, includes systems of values. Culture is the integrated sum total of learned behavior traits that are shared by members of a society. It can be considered as the distinctive way of living of a people. It includes every part of life of a people. Culture deals with a group's design for living. It is pertinent to the study of international marketing. Successful marketer clearly must be a student of culture. The manner in which people consume, the priority of needs and the wants they attempt to satisfy, and the manner in which they satisfy them are functions of their culture that temper, mold, and dictate their style of living. Culture is the human made part of human environment, the sum total of knowledge, beliefs, art, morals, law, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by humans as members of society. Culture is everything that people have, think, and do as members of their society. Thus, culture is made up of material objects, ideas, values, and attitudes, normative or expected patterns of behavior.
Let's start with the meaning of culture. Georg Hofstede, an expert on cross cultural differences and management, defines culture as the collective programming of the mind which distinguishes the members of one human group from another. Culture, in this sense, includes systems of values. Culture is the human made part of human environment, the sum total of knowledge, beliefs, art, morals, laws, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by humans as members of a society. Culture is everything that people have, think, and do as members of their society. Culture is made up of material objects, ideas, values, and attitudes, and normative or expected patterns of behavior. Let's discuss the characteristics of culture. These are acceptability. It represents the kind of behavior that is acceptable in a society. For example, consumption of alcoholic drinks is acceptable in the West but is not socially acceptable in India. Socially shared. Culture is based on social interaction and creation. For example, McDonald's introduced the Aloo Tikki burger only in India to meet the needs of the vegetarian consumers who comprise a huge population. Cumulative. Culture is also based on the accumulated circumstances over hundreds or even thousands of years. For example, Indians have been very conservative in their method of savings and investment, and according to traditional practices, they believed in spending according to their earnings. Therefore, taking loans and buying cars, homes, was a big no for an Indian consumer before liberalization. But these practices are getting changed. Dynamic. Culture is dynamic in nature and goes on changing. New ideas are added and old ideas are dropped. For example, 25 years ago, Indian housewives never allowed their family members to eat in restaurants. But today the scenario is different, and with increasing number of women working outside, now Indian families prefer to eat outside at least once a week. Similarly, there is an increased consciousness amongst the Indian youth to look slim and smart.
Culture represents the entire set of social norms and responses that dominate the behavior of persons living in a particular geographic or political boundary. Cultural boundaries may differ from national or political boundaries because individuals with varying cultural backgrounds may reside in a particular nation. For example, Canada has three cultures: an Anglo culture, a French speaking Quebecois culture, and a Native American culture. Culture is transmitted through the process of learning and interacting with one's environment rather than through the genetic process. Culture can be thought of as a storehouse of all the knowledge of a society. The child who is born into any society finds that the problems that confront all people have already been solved by those who have lived before. For example, material objects, methods for acquiring food, language, rules of government, forms of marriage, and systems of religion have already been discovered and are functioning within the culture when the child is born. For example, if a male child is born into a small country village in Spain, during his lifetime, he will likely to acquire his food by farming, pay allegiance to the Spanish government, enjoy bullfighting, and be a Catholic. Let me take an example of another child who is born into an East African herding society. In contrast, he will probably acquire his food from cattle rearing, obey the laws of his elders, spend his leisure time telling tribal folk tales, and worship his ancestors as gods. Although these children will grow up to behave quite differently, one basic principle concerning culture is clear. Both children were born into an already existing culture. Each child has only to learn the various solutions to these basic human problems established by his culture. Once these solutions are learned, behavior becomes almost automatic. In other words, culture is passed on from one generation to another within a society. It is not inborn or instinctive. It is acquired and inculcated. It represents the whole set of social norms and responses that shape the knowledge, beliefs, morals, attitude, behavior, and the way of life of a person or group of persons. Markets are the result of the three-way interaction of a marketer's efforts, economic conditions, and all other elements of the culture. Businessmen are constantly adjusting their efforts to cultural demands of the market, but they also are acting as agents of change whenever the product or idea being marketed is innovative. Whatever the degree of acceptance, in whatever level of culture, the use of something new is the beginning of cultural change, and the marketer becomes a change agent.
Culture represents the entire set of social norms and responses that dominate the behavior of persons living in a particular geographic or political boundary. Cultural boundaries may differ from national political boundaries because individuals with varying cultural backgrounds may reside in a particular nation. Culture is transmitted through the process of learning and interacting with one's environment rather than through the genetic process. Culture is passed on from one generation to another within a society. It is not inborn or instinctive, it is acquired and inculcated. Markets are the result of the three-way interaction of a marketer's efforts, economic conditions, and all other elements of the culture. Businessmen are constantly adjusting their efforts to cultural demands of the market, but they are also acting as agents of change whenever the product or idea being marketed is innovative. Whatever the degree of acceptance in whatever level of culture, the use of something new is the beginning of cultural change, and the marketer becomes a change agent. Let us discuss basic elements of culture one by one. Social structure. Social institutions refers to the way people relate to other people. It includes family, education, political structures, social organizations, where people organize their activities in order to live in harmony with one another. These institutions teach acceptable behavior to live in a societal setup.
Each institution has an effect upon international business because each influences behavior, values, and the pattern of life. In cultures where the social organizations result in close knit family units, it is more effective to aim a promotional campaign at a family unit than at an individual member. In the United States of America and UK and the most developed countries, the size of the family is small, comprising of a husband, wife, and children. But in many other countries, grandparents are also a part of the family. For example, in India, we have a joint family setup where three or four generations are living together. Social institutions form an integral part of culture. They are mainly concerned with family structure and social stratification. Family decision making involves decisions with regard to how family members interact and influence one another in terms of individual, family, or household purchases. Kotler asserts that there are two families in the buyer's life: the family of orientation and the family of procreation. The family of orientation consists of one's parents and siblings, from where a person acquires an orientation towards religion, politics, and economics, and a sense of personal ambition, self worth, and love. The parents' influence on the buyer's behavior can be significant, especially in those countries where they live with their grown up children. The family of procreation consists of one spouse and children who have a more direct influence on everyday buying behavior. In most societies, three types of families dominate: the married couple, the nuclear family, and the extended family. The married couple family consists of only the husband and the wife, including the newly married couples or older couples who have already raised their children. The second type of family is known as the nuclear family, which consists of the husband, wife, and one or more children. The nuclear family, along with at least one grandparent living within the household, is known as the extended family. Nowadays, a fourth type of family is rising in number due to divorce, separation, and out of wedlock births, which is known as the single parent family, which is present in Western societies more often. In India and in a few more countries, the joint family system was prevalent in earlier times, where all the members of the family, consisting of uncles, aunts, their children, grandparents, and all others having a share in the property, used to live together. This type of family is fast vanishing from India, as Business Today has reported that in today's scenario, the breakup of the joint and extended family has a significant role to play in the emergence of new urban family as a customer. According to it, in 1971, the average urban family consisted of 5.46 members, wherein individuals had little room for bonding. In 1997, there were only 4.6 members, a dimension that enables the members of a family to relate to one another and still have their own space. In some societies, social stratification is very apparent. Some countries maintain discrimination in offices between bosses and subordinates, whereas there are countries where all the employees eat lunch together every day.
Language. It is the medium through which message is conveyed. A country's language is the key to its culture. Language reflects the nature and values of culture. It may be verbal or non-verbal. Learning a language means learning a society's culture because the words of the language are merely concepts reflecting the culture. People also communicate through non-verbal medium. Non-verbal communications has different meanings in different cultures.
Language is the medium through which message is conveyed. It may be verbal or non-verbal. For example, the English language has a rich vocabulary for commercial and industrial activities, reflecting the nature of English and US societies. Many less industrialized societies have only limited vocabularies for those activities but richer vocabularies for matters important to their culture. Learning a language means learning a society's culture because the words of the language are merely concepts reflecting the culture. For the firm to communicate well with political leaders, employees, suppliers, and customers, it must assimilate this one aspect of culture more than any other. When an international manager gives instructions to its subordinates who normally come from the host country, the instructions must be understood properly by the latter. Again, even if the language is the same in two countries, it is possible that the same phrase carries different meanings in different countries. For example, the word homely means friendly and comfortable in England, but plain or even ugly in the United States. Many times, words in a particular language sound different when translated in different languages. For example, American Motors Matador becomes killer in Spanish. Ford's low cost truck Fiera meant ugly old woman when translated into Spanish. Even the Pepsi Cola slogan, "Come alive with Pepsi," when it was translated into German, it meant "come out of the grave." Thus, multinational managers must be very careful of what their instructions really mean. Languages such as English, French, and Spanish have widespread acceptance and are prevalent in more than 40 countries. Countries that share a same language, commerce, are easier because translating everything is not necessary. English is the world's most important language and 6% of the world's people speak it as a native language, whereas it accounts for 42% of its economic output. Whereas 15% of native population speaks Mandarin, but it accounts for 5% world output by language. People also communicate through non-verbal medium. Non-verbal communications means differently in different cultures. For example, in the American culture, eye-to-eye contact is considered polite, whereas it is considered rude in Japan or in Indian countries. Japanese and Chinese businessmen like exchanging visiting cards. The visiting cards should be taken with both hands and regarded reverently for a while, and when they are stored, it has to be the jacket pocket. Putting them in a trouser means an insult. Some other non-verbal clues include sitting at a table around a corner signals cooperation and active listening. Sitting straight across from another signals confrontation. Sitting side by side makes conversation awkward. Standing in presence of the elders and touching their feet, it means respecting the elders, and it is a very important concept in Indian culture. Removing shoes while entering the host's house is a normal practice in India.
Education. It includes the process of transmitting skills, ideas, and attitudes as well as training in particular disciplines. If the level of education is high in a particular society, it is easy for multinational firms to operate there. It is because skilled manpower would be easily available, its training would be easy, and it would help in producing sophisticated products. There is a strong interrelationship between culture and language in education. It is not the level of education but also the pattern of education which is important.
The international businessman should be an educator also. The level of education in a particular culture depends primarily on the literacy rate and on enrollment in schools and colleges. This element has a close relationship with the availability of skilled manpower, availability of workers and managers who can be sent to the home country for training, production of sophisticated products, and with the adaptation of imported technology. If the level of education is high in a particular society, it is easy for multinational firms to operate there. It is because skilled manpower would be easily available, its training would be easy, and it would help in producing sophisticated products. It helps to determine success in the following ways. It provides a clearer understanding of a given situation. It establishes the most effective and faltering bridges to local people. Speaking the local language helps the international manager to have a direct access to the host's willingness to communicate openly in their own language. Language properly and effectively learned provides one of the most practical means of understanding another culture. An understanding of the local language allows the person to pick up nuances, clinches, implied meanings, and other information that is not stated outrightly. It builds confidence and earns the respect and admiration of the local people, thereby making managers more effective. Thus, there is a strong interrelationship between culture and language. The international marketer should be concerned about the situation because it is a key determinant of the nature of consumer market and the kinds of marketing personnel available. Further, it is not the level of education but also the pattern of education which is important. Some important implications of it are the following. If consumers are largely illiterate, advertising programs and package labels need to be adapted. If girls and women are largely educated from formal education, marketing programs would differ from those aimed at the homemakers. Products that are complex or need written instructions may need to be modified to meet the educational levels of the market. The quality of marketing support services such as advertising agencies depends on how well the educational system prepares people for such occupations.
Life and thereby the values and attitude of individuals living in a society. These values manifest in individuals' behavior and performance. Each country has its own religious profile. Each of the religions has its particular impact on the attitudes and behavior of consumers who follow it. The impact of religions on business is mostly in developing attitudes of people towards work, product service, price fixation, entrepreneurship, and cost of doing business.
Each country has its own religious profile, but such major world religions such as Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam cover 80% of the world's population. According to Max Weber, in case of Christians who are Protestants, there is a relationship between Protestantism and the spirit of capitalism. Protestants' ethics emphasizes the importance of hard work and creation of wealth, as God feels happy when wealth is created. In Islam, the Quran approves of doing business and earning legitimate profits. Islam asserts that all property is a favor from Allah, and those who hold property are regarded as the trustees who are entitled for receiving profits. Each of these religions has its particular impact on the attitudes and behavior of consumers who follow it. For example, the traditional animist might be reluctant to accept new products. The devout Buddhist who is seeking an absence of desire or a state of wantlessness is not a strong consumer. Other religious impacts on marketing include religious holidays and product taboos, the role of women in the economy and society, and caste system. Finally, religious divisions in a country may indicate market segments that require different marketing programs and sales force. The impact of religions on business is mostly in developing attitudes of people towards work, product or service, price fixation, entrepreneurship, and cost of doing business.
Customs and manners. Customs are common or established practices. It indicates how things are to be done and what society collectively expects its members to do. Manners are behaviors that are regarded as appropriate in a particular society. These are the pointers of an individual's character. Customs and manners differ from country to country. The international manager should understand the manners and customs of host country citizens. Failure to understand and respect local customs and manners may land the manager in trouble besides losing business. This may include individualism versus subordination to group, decision making and authority patterns, management objectives, aspirations and attitudes, attitudes towards personal life and work, attitude towards perfection, importance to group, formality in business dealings, tempo of business dealings. Aesthetics. As we acquire our culture, we learn the meaning of this wonderful symbolic system represented in the aesthetics, that is, the arts, folklore, music, drama, and dance. The aesthetics are of interest to the international marketer because of their role in interpreting the symbolic meanings of the various methods of artistic expressions, color, and standards of beauty in a particular culture. Insensitivity to the aesthetic value not only leads to ineffective advertising, but it can also lead to offending the proposed customer or creating a negative impression. Thus, we need to understand the aesthetic value in the international arena. Color. Colors have particular meanings because of religious, patriotic, or aesthetic reasons. Color meanings can vary symbolically and emotionally from culture to culture and from person to person. A global manager needs to know the significance of colors in a culture in planning products, packaging, and advertising to understand how they are being decoded by the customers. For example, black is the color of mourning in Western countries, whereas white is the color of mourning in Eastern countries. Green is popular in Muslim countries, while red and black are negative in several African countries. For any market, the right choice of colors will be related to the aesthetic sense of the buyer's culture rather than of the marketer's culture. Music and dance. With modern communications, popular music has become truly international. Nevertheless, there are obvious differences between Western music and that of Middle East, Africa, or India. Likewise, the dance styles of African tribal groups are quite different from Western dance styles. Government. Governments try to influence the thinking and behaviors of adult citizens for the citizens' own good. It influences thinking and behavior through the passage, promulgation, promotion, and enforcement of variety of laws affecting consumption and marketing behaviors.
For example, the French government has been using citizens to procreate since the time of Napoleon. Now, the government is offering a new birth bonus of $800 given to women in their seventh month of pregnancy, despite France having the second highest fertility rate in the EU, behind only to Ireland. Many changes in governments, such as the dissolution of the Soviet Union, have had noticeable impact in personal beliefs and other aspects of culture. Iran is currently ruled by religious clerics. Governments also affect ways of thinking indirectly through their support of religious organizations and schools. For example, Japanese and Chinese governments are currently trying to promote their creative thinking among students through mandated changes in classroom activities. Governments influence thinking and behavior through the passage, promulgation, promotion, and enforcement of variety of laws affecting consumption and marketing behaviors.
Summarize, we can say that cultural diversity influences competitive advantage. Effective use of cross cultural teams can provide a source of experience and innovative thinking to enhance the competitive position of organizations. However, cultural differences can interfere with the successful completion of projects in today's multicultural global business community. To achieve project goals and avoid cultural misunderstandings, project managers should be culturally sensitive and promote creativity and motivation through flexible leadership.